Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
Jake.
And this week we've got the return of Heather Antos. I feel like that's the quickest turnaround we've had between a guest and a guest. Between them coming on and coming back on.
That's probably true.
I think it feels right.
Yeah, she's here to talk about Thrawn, the new Star Wars miniseries, which adapts the Timothy Zahn book of the same name, which is kind of this new continuity of really one of the most beloved expanded universe characters of all time in Star Wars history. That first issue is out on Valentine's Day. Comic book stores everywhere and on Comixology. And, you know, Heather's the editor on this. She's not the assistant editor. She's straight up the head editor on this. We also talk about her work over with Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. I think it's safe to say with this episode, everything's coming up Antos.
Ooh.
But let's let her talk about that. And coming back on the show, we have Heather Antos. She's the editor on really the entire Marvel Star Wars line, Amazing Spider-Man, Renew Your Vows, Unbelievable Gwenpool. And, for eagle-eyed readers, she isn't the assistant editor on Thrawn. She is straight up the editor.
Ooh.
Like,
Woo!
woo! So, welcome back, Heather.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be back as always, especially to talk about the blue guy.
Yeah. So we're seeing our first, well, I guess Rebels and the Timothy Zahn, but this is certainly the first comic book depiction in the new continuity of the Grand Admiral Thrawn. You know, what is it about this character? I mean, you've certainly mentioned he's one of your favorite characters, if not in an expanded universe and perhaps all of Star Wars. What is it about Thrawn that has connected with fans for decades and makes it the right time for him to show up in this new continuity?
Well, I mean, he's just a badass, there's no one else like him in the Star Wars universe. He's so smart and so mysterious in his tacticians and the way that he does things that you always know he's going to come out on top because he's just that good, but you don't know exactly what cards he has up his sleeve. And so it's always interesting to see his plans as they unfold. He's a character that I feel like you love to hate him if you don't just straight up love him. 'Cause you can't help respecting someone who's just that goddamn smart,
Mm-hmm. I think we all hate how much we love him.
Yeah.
Or is it that we? Either way, with this book, you're working with Jodie, who you worked with previously on the Rogue One adaptation, and who you're working with on Amazing Spider-Man: Renew Your Vows. What made her the right artist for Thrawn?
Jodie,
writer, yeah.
Yeah, she's my writer. Well, Jodie proved her chops at just adaptations in general with Rogue One. I think she did a stellar job with that, taking a story that people had already seen and knew and loved and found a really unique way to make it fresh in the comic book form, bringing new things, that we hadn't seen in the film to the pages. And so I knew I wanted to work with her again on another adaptation, but Jodie also is one of the few writers I knew who already knew who Thrawn was, had read all Tim Zahn's like old, the Legends stuff, Heir to the Empire, and we've already had conversations before gushing about Thrawn and how much we love the character. And so I knew, like, if I'm going to find someone who's going to not only do a great job with the adaptation, but be able to bring a fresh take to it, she would be the right person, especially because she already has a sense of understanding for this character. Because Thrawn isn't an easy character to write. Not everyone can write someone like him. He's not motivated by action. He's very much in his head, but we don't ever get to see in his head. So it takes, you have to use someone who truly understands that character to be able to keep it exciting.
Was Thrawn being a character that hadn't existed in the current continuity up until recently, without going into too much spoilery detail, what would you say the differences between Legends era Thrawn, other than timeline, Heir to the Empire taking place, I guess after Return of the Jedi. What would you say are some of the differences between this vision of Thrawn and the in the Legends era?
You know, he's got as much as his agenda is the same, he's got a bit of a different agenda. You know, his agenda, as he puts forward, without being too spoilery, is you know, his people. He wants to protect his people. That's all what he's there for, even though his people have exiled him, so to speak. And so he's willing to do whatever it takes and be loyal or disloyal to whoever it takes in order to protect that. And but this time he's got a couple of different cards up his sleeve. Sorry to make the analogy again, but it's true. And yeah, it's interesting and fun to get him to see with this different cast of characters in the new canon, where the stakes are different, where, you know, the impacts that he makes or the actions that he takes have a bigger impact on, you know, because he's in the TV show, and that TV show is going to impact these characters as they progress through different books and the comics and the games and eventually films and stuff. And so it's so cool to have a character like Thrawn who, you know, looking back with the EU, essentially started the EU, come back in the new canon and have an even bigger impact.
I feel like my gateway into the EU was Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
That was so if we get Prince Zesor back, I'm just fingers crossed, no pressure. But now, was Heir to the Empire kind of your gateway into the wider world of Star Wars outside of the films?
The games were my first gateway out into the world outside of the films, but Heir to the Empire was definitely the first series of books I read. I've been obsessed with Thrawn ever since I, you know, first discovered him. And as soon as Jordan will tell you, as soon as I got hired onto Marvel, my first question was, when can we do a Thrawn book? And Jordan looked at me and said, "Who's that?"
Oh. Sorry,
but 3 years later, here we are.
Yeah, and you've got the how did was that Jordan remembering that Thrawn was one of your favorite characters combined with 3 years of like stellar work? And I'm getting my nose brown, but it is really consistently some of the best, you know, books that Marvel is putting out. It's the Star Wars book. Was that just kind of like, now I'm jumping into the driver's seat editorially? Because I mean, this is a character that you've mentioned is one of your all-time favorites. Was that something that you had campaigned for?
I mean, yeah, I've been campaigning to do a book with Thrawn for a long time. You know, so much so that before we even knew he was in Rebels, I'm texting Matt Martin and just being like, "Hey guys, like, I know you can't like actually say if Thrawn is coming back, but is Thrawn coming back? You know, or is there a possibility?" And Matt would say back to me, I can say he's not coming back. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, so he's not off the table. But yeah, mixed with that, the tricky thing when you have a license as big as Star Wars, for a company as big as Marvel, is you want to sell the biggest titles, right? Of course, we want to do Darth Vader. Nothing sells better than Darth Vader. Of course, we want to do, you know, books with Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and books with the characters in the movies. Doing a character that isn't as familiar to a commercial audience like Thrawn is a bit of a risk. And so it took a lot of finagling and persuading in order to, you know, get the marketing folks and get my bosses to be like, no, Thrawn's a legit character. Like, comic book fans might not know who Thrawn is, but Star Wars fans do. And if we announce doing a Thrawn comic, Star Wars fans will lose their mind.
Oh yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
They did. And I'm just hoping that, because the only way I could get Marvel to agree to let me do this book was if we did an adaptation of the novel. I'm hoping that if this does so well enough that Marvel will let me then, tell a fresh, completely brand new story with Thrawn. So go out and buy the book so I can do that.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. We had a big debate right before here in the studio before we started taping, kind of regarding the EU. And one of the big things of the EU, or certainly the discussion that got us all as fans got kicked off, is who's your favorite bounty hunter? So, Heather, I'm going to forward the same question to you. In the wide, wide world of Star Warsdom, because it isn't for none of us, it isn't who you'd think, which is to say Boba Fett. None of us are Boba Fett.
Nope.
But
anyone who follows me on Twitter knows mine's not Boba Fett.
Fair enough. But yeah, who's your favorite of the who's your favorite bounty hunter?
It's tough. I have to be a little biased, and I want to say Chanath Cha.
Oh, wow.
Even though she's not EU, she's current canon. For those unfamiliar, Chanath Cha first appeared in the Lando comic that Charles Soule wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And she may or may not be having another appearance very soon in our comics. Ooh. That's all I'll say. But she's badass. Zam Wessel is badass. There were some really cool stories about her in Legends.
Mm-hmm.
I would say those are my favorites.
For the record, Chris and I are IG-88 fans.
Okay, and I can respect that.
Anyone that wants to kill all humans.
And there's like a repurposed.
Oh, you mean 000?
000 is the evil C-3PO. Yeah.
No. I thought IG-88 had that storyline where he was.
He was originally an assassin droid, right? That is like,
yeah.
Oh, I can like turn a profit from this.
Now I want to do a comic of IG-88 and 000 hanging out.
Yeah. There you go.
That'd be fun.
You could do a 5-issue Bounty Hunters miniseries. I feel like there is definitely people lose their shit over Thrawn.
Oh yeah, we definitely that's something that we're waiting to get the thumbs up to do.
Yeah. Well, I remember you guys had brought like Cad Bane into the Darth Maul comic, and I was like, oh yeah, we're sitting pretty. But Jake, for the listeners at home, do you want to?
It's Forlom. Forlom is like the description. I remember it was like years ago, but where he's like a service droid who's just like, no, I'm gonna be a bad guy now. I'm gonna run this program. No more service droid for me. And his design is just so wild. I feel like it was.
Is it the bug eyes, Jake?
It's the bug eyes, like the bug eyes, and he's got like the Vader kind of like vent face, and like I feel like I don't know if this is right, but I remember like Sam, you and I were like watching something, and I just became obsessed with Forlom.
Oh, we were playing Lego Star Wars.
Oh, Lego Star Wars, yeah. And I was like,
because you can be like all of them.
Yeah, there's Forlom, and I was like, this guy's so crazy. And I feel like when they threw him in one of the movies in the background, kind of like
Empire,
Empire with all the bounty hunters. They just like threw droid pieces together, and they were like, "That's Forlom."
I mean, IG-88 is straight up props.
Yeah,
and I love it.
If I remember correctly, he's like a cold water heater.
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's right.
So, I mean, you've got the Amazing Spider-Man: Renew Your Vows, which is seeing a time jump. You've got all the other Star Wars books. I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that. We've got Darth Vader by Charles, who did the who created the, I can't pronounce your favorite bounty hunter, who you literally just over in Lando. Chanath Cha. Yeah, so you've got, how would you say, what can you tease about the Star Wars books? You've got Kieran doing the main Star Wars book with Han Solo leading this courageous kind of like charge in the most recent issue. You've got Poe Dameron, kind of doing the rescuing Max von Sydow from the banking clans. How is it kind of like spinning all those plates, and do you have like just a giant whiteboard in the office, like, okay, this is where we're at, and this is where, like, I was wondering kind of like behind the scenes, how that all kind of works?
So every editor kind of does things differently. There are offices that kind of have a whiteboard thing going on. The X office does, which makes sense because they have 20,000 million X-Men to deal with. But yeah, no, I'm definitely the person that writes everything down in a notebook. So I have a Darth Vader notebook. I have a Poe Dameron notebook. I have a notebook for basically every single series that I work on, where I jot things down and stuff like that. And then it's just a lot of communication with the writers and Jordan and Lucasfilm, and a lot of like reading things in the script and being, I don't remember that. Let me check my notes. So, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own system for how they manage everything, but it does get a bit complex sometimes playing in the 3 different time periods for sure. Knowing the Millennium Falcon in this era has this satellite dish, and this era has this satellite dish, but then it's dirty like this, or it has this logo on it, or this coloring. Oh, but in this era, this is what the stormtroopers look like. Or in this era, it's phase 2 clones versus phase 3 clones, and so that can get very overwhelming remembering where exactly each story arc and series is taking place, and for that we definitely do rely heavily on the help of Lucasfilm with helping us out with that sort of stuff, because it's just a lot for one person to remember.
Sure, yeah. I remember the last time you were on, you said one of the big storytelling debates that you had regarding Thrawn was, can Chiss grow facial hair?
Yes.
I was wondering, now we've seen preview pages, clean-shaven Thrawn, but can Chiss, just as an aside to answer this debate, can Chiss grow facial hair?
They cannot.
Oh.
They cannot. Matt Martin swung the gavel on that one, and it is apparently, he says, he's telling me it's his favorite question he's ever been asked by us. So I have to come up with something to top that, because he says they had a serious conversation about it in story group, and it's just one of those things where it's like, I want to be in the room where that happened, where a group of adults sat down and conversed whether or not this fictional race of alien can grow facial hair.
I think a bearded Thrawn would have looked badass.
I guess we will never get the sexy hipster Williamsburg.
at least not
the
in
barista.
this canon.
Yeah.
This canon.
Yeah.
We can still get top knot Thrawn.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
Can still.
Yeah.
Yes.
He had quite the hair in those first couple pages. Or was it the whole comic? I've already forgotten.
No, it's he's got the military cut.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he goes
But
right back.
See,
to
that's where having no facial hair really helps with the military haircut and being like in an academy, because that's one less thing you have to worry about with inspection is having facial hair. Because when I was in military school, I would have loved the fact not have to grow any facial hair, because then you could spend more time shining your shoes or anything else.
Is that literally what you were looking forward to in military school?
No, but I mean I'm saying in terms of like, there's not a lot to do, but like in terms of inspection, yeah, you don't have to worry about shaving. So that's a plus for Thrawn.
There you go. But yeah, over
many pluses of Thrawn.
That's
let's
right.
be honest.
That's right.
Yeah. It helps with him focus on his tactical.
Yeah, exactly.
genius.
That's why he's so smart. He doesn't have to worry about shaving ever.
He doesn't have to use that brain power. I get it.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to worry about dollars.
Do I grow a mustache? Do I go goatee?
That's why he can out plan anyone else in the Empire, because he's like, everyone else is like, oh, do I want to go goatee? And he's just like, no, the rebels are going to be here.
It does make me wonder, though. I want to know, if Chiss gets sunburned, do they turn purple? Like, what happens there?
There you go.
I think that's my next question for Matt.
Yeah. If you think about it, though, First Order, Empire, and you guys are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody in the Empire has facial hair.
Well, it's strict rules, man.
Yeah,
I'm
they
assuming it's
can
strict
have
rules.
some wicked sideburns.
That's
We've
right.
seen that.
Yes.
They have had some chops that are quite mutton.
Yeah.
But nothing on the chin or upper lip. I believe that's the limitations right there. I wonder, do you think it was because Palpatine couldn't grow facial hair and he was just like, nah, I can't, so you
he's
can't.
like, if I see a damn beard anywhere on this Star Destroyer.
I have a sudden flash. One of the commanders, I think in Empire, did have a mustache.
He also gets choked out by Vader, so
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because he didn't shave it off.
Yeah.
It's Palpatine's rule.
that's right.
One of my favorite moments in old school EU is in one of the 1980s Star Wars comics. a bunch of Imperial officers hold hands and swear to protect themselves from ever getting choked out from Darth Vader, and that's Legends. I will send it to you on Twitter. I swear to God, it's real.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
What?
We promise we swear to ourselves we won't get choked out by Vader.
Yeah, they have they form a circle to sing Kumbaya. They hold hands and they in unison, very happily, say that that's not going to ever happen to them.
Very happily. Do they skip away afterwards?
Still holding hands.
Do they throw glitter? What is the end to this? They get choked out, right? That has to be how it ends.
I mean, yeah, because they try to they stand up to Darth. Spoilers for a 35-year-old comic, but yeah, they stand up to Darth Vader, and then they progressively.
He's I'm gonna grow a mustache, and he's like, "No, you're not."
And that's, again, my favorite moment in old school EU.
Well, also Vader, all of his hair is burned off, so that'd be another thing. He'd be so against any kind of facial hair.
That's why
hair in general.
Yeah, because Annie had great hair.
He did.
Annie had long, good. He had good hair. He could top knot if he wanted.
Well conditioned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he L'Oreal's it every
the chosen one.
And to be fair, a lot of Jedi did have beards.
That's true.
Yep.
Palpatine was just sitting there, in Jedi, just sitting there watching this battle, going, "Goddamn beards and Jedi."
I'll burn them all.
Yeah. That was Order 66.
And that's with the electricity. He would zap off their beard first.
This is welcome back to the madness, Heather.
Oh, I live for this. This is why I make Star Wars comics. Really, is for this moment.
So
not for the love of Star Wars, for the love of this.
Yeah,
yes.
This inane debate. But so the Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows is seeing a time jump. Was that something that was kind of brought up by Jody, or was that something hey, we want to see May in high school and that sort of thing?
That was something that was given to me when I took on the book. The first year was edited by Darren Chan, who at that time he was in the Spidey office, but they moved him to the X office to take over a bunch of books there. So he was losing his Spidey books. And I really wanted that book. And when it was given to me, it was around the time Marvel was doing all the legacy stuff. And so every book was kind of getting not a shakeup per se, but every book wanted a big hook. And so the direction I was given for Renew Your Vows was, well, let's see Annie in high school. And I thought that was really interesting for that one because, we're going to see Annie at high school the same age that Peter was when he first became Spider-Man. But the big difference is he was figuring it all out on his own and was new at it. She's been doing it her entire life, but still has these parents that, see her as this little kid. And so, as teenagers, we're all struggling to find our place in the world and think we're invincible and don't need our parents and we know it all. On top of it, she's a superhero. So there's some interesting dynamics that can come with that.
Yeah. Kind of because we never got that with, say, I'm trying to think of more contemporary, Kamala's parents were never superheroes. Miles Morales' parents were never superheroes. And so, yeah, you kind of... And Annie's parents are the most, or certainly her father is the most iconic superhero in the entire Marvel universe.
Yeah, and they love their little girl, and they've seen some scary stuff. And in our first arc, first issue came out, you see them go head to head with the Lizard, and what parents wants to see their 15-year-old daughter go head to head with this giant man lizard? That's terrifying.
I don't know if I've ever heard him Kurt Connors compared to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he is.
Just
you're right.
a man lizard.
Okay,
I was trying to think of something more creative. It didn't happen. Here we are. No regrets.
But it works.
Never.
It is no less accurate.
Yeah, it is very accurate.
I feel like everybody has a different response to this too. Maybe not everybody, but who is your favorite Spider-Man villain?
My favorite Spider-Man villain? Oh, man, that's tough.
Because he's got one of the best rogues galleries in comics.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you put up his villains. I think Spider-Man's villains and Batman has the best. Those two have the best villains in comic books, period.
Oh, no doubt.
I think as of the moment, I'm going to say Doc Ock, mostly because of Dan Slott's Superior Spider-Man run, which I absolutely loved. And I think that dynamic is super, super interesting. But I don't know, it's so tough. Mysterio's great, Sandman's great. You know, they're I don't know, they're awesome.
Yeah, Mysterio is my favorite because he's such a goofball. Like he's
Fishbowl head.
Yeah.
With the weird eyes, like tape. Like it's weird. I always forget their eyes until it kind of grosses me out.
And maybe one of my favorite Mysterio moments of all time is in the Spider-Man 2 game, one of the greatest video games of all time, where he's like, I don't remember exactly, he's like in a 7-Eleven, basically, or whatever. And like he shows up, and at the point of the game, I had like no health left. This is back before like, regeneration and all that kind of stuff. And so like my Spider-Man was like half dead. Here comes Mysterio, and he has like 4 health bars that like show up. And I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to run head on in and like kick him in the face.
Just like Spider-Man would.
Like Spider-Man would. And you kick him, and he's a one-hit kill. And it's like the funniest thing with Mysterio. I don't know. He's just, I love he kind of got the little bit of like the like, belly. Like he's not like in shape. He's just this kind of like,
well, neither is Doc Ock.
But Doc Ock's not either. But like, I don't know.
I guess now he is. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Mysterio is he's funny. And most of the like horrible stuff he does is to like Daredevil, not Spider-Man. So Spider-Man's like, get out of here.
Yeah. Pushes as I push up my glasses and go, what about Hobgoblin, guys? Because he's mine.
Hobgoblin's scary, man.
Hobgoblin's creepy.
Yeah.
He was the big bad on the animated series.
Yeah, he was scary.
That's voiced by Mark Hamill to tie it all around. Because
was he voiced by Mark Hamill, really?
Yeah, Mark Hamill gets to voice all the cool stuff. Joker.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
He is the trickster.
Yeah, straight up in the Flash. So
both Flash series too.
Yes, yeah. And the Justice League Unlimited.
Yep.
So yeah, he triple dips that lucky fella. Okay. So just geeking out over Mark Hamill as you do on this show, but I guess Heather, as you may recall, something, and I'm sure the answer is probably the same, but what are you currently geeking out over?
Well, as you guys know, because I was a little late to this recording, Battlegrounds. I'm still playing that video game. It's a lot of fun. I just recently picked up the graphic novel Trashed by Dirk Berg. Oh gosh, I can't pronounce his name. Dirk Bergdorf or something like that. Guy who wrote My Friend Dahmer. But he wrote this graphic novel called Trashed, where it is about these college dropouts who are trash collectors, and never in my life would I have thought I would have ever found a graphic novel about garbage men fascinating. But it was fascinating. It was just really interesting to see the sorts of stuff that these guys would do to stay sane while collecting garbage. And it was also pseudo educational with fun facts from the EPA scattered through it. Fun facts meaning how humans are destroying the world and we're all going to die eventually from destroying the earth. Fun read.
Nice light.
Super uplifting.
Yeah.
But no, it was really, really interesting. And yeah, I'm just still so shocked that a book about trash was fascinating. But it is, and you should check it out if you like interesting things.
Do we like interesting things?
I like it. I used to work for a trash company, so that would be interesting.
True.
Oh, see, there you go.
Yeah.
Get it on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
The I don't know if you can go into specifics, but I always feel like right around April, you guys start the adaptations of the latest cinematic Star Wars, and I'm sure you guys are going to adapt. Yeah.
Imperial AT-AT.
Yes. The Last Jedi. So can we expect a similar timetable? Again, you don't necessarily have to go into specifics, or maybe you can just confirm there's going to be a Last Jedi comic.
I can say, Yes.
There's not going to be a comic.
not going to happen. It's not coming out in April. I will say that.
Okay.
April Solicits actually just came out this week, the week that we're recording this. But so if it was happening, it would come out then. But we are doing one. I'm super stoked about the creative team. They're hard at work. I think you guys are going to lose your minds when you see the awesome covers. And see who's doing the adaptation. And I can also hint at another comic that is tying in with another Star Wars movie that may or may not be also coming out in May.
Oh, well, start your engines, I suppose.
A Vulptex solo movie. I'm hoping.
The Salacious Crumb miniseries.
Dude, I've been like my favorite. Okay, if we're just talking,
You joke, but I have a pitch for that.
Oh,
see,
He just has the best name.
okay, here's the thing. Like we're talking favorite EU characters. That's like been the thread this interview. My favorite EU character, no shit, is Max Rebo.
and the Max
Really?
Rebo 7.
Yeah, every time
I don't think that's actually their name. But
there's a number there, but there's every time I watch Return of the Jedi, and I watch that movie a lot. The every time he's that blue elephant's on the screen, just going to town on those xylophone
It's
keyboards.
like it's the worst instrument from the play because he has the fattest fingers, so he's like hitting every note all at once, and it's just like it's perfect.
And his nose snout is moving in time, and he's just there's something about I don't know what it is. If it's the fact that he's the most colorful thing in Jabba's palace.
Oh yeah, he sticks out like a sore thumb.
Like it's Max Rebo.
there's a character with a very similar shape and the same color blue in the Michael Jackson Captain EO mini movie.
Yes, which is no longer at Epcot, right?
Unfortunately. But for the longest time, I thought it just was Max Rebo until they brought it back a couple years ago, and I went and I watched it like 3 times, and I was like, that's not Max Rebo at all. But I like Max Rebo as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's my favorite of like the minor characters, but
He's a star in my heart, Chris. He's a star in my heart.
Speaking of that general scene, as in Jabba's palace as a whole, I've always had a soft spot for the guy that the caretaker for the oh God, I'm blanking because I'm talking about the Rancor like caretaker,
the one that cries.
Yeah, I've always been like, oh, that sucks.
I always feel for that guy.
Out of all the emotional moments in that movie, that's one of the ones that hits me the hardest because it's right away.
Yeah, and he probably raised that Rancor from whatever.
From like its egg or whatever.
There's a little fan comic that somebody did.
The Calvin and Hobbes style.
Yeah, like you
so
see
good.
him like raising the Rancor, and I'm like, oh.
It just hurts. It hurts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess before we release you back to the wilds of Brooklyn, Heather, I guess anything you can tease across literally all the many, obviously you've got Thrawn, but you've got Poe Dameron, Star Wars, Darth Vader, and Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. I guess we already touched on Thrawn and Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, but anything you can kind of tease on the other books you're editing?
For Poe Dameron, I will say it was just announced this week. We're getting into TFA territory, so it'll be our first time seeing new content that happens at the same time as the films. So starting with Poe number 26, we get to see exactly how Poe Dameron got off of Jakku in The Force Awakens.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That has been something that I've wondered.
Yeah.
Well, now you get to learn.
And real quick, is I think out of the 3 of us, the only one that has read the novel, the Thrawn novel that the comic is based on.
The new one, yeah.
Yeah. The so far Jody and I assume the whole team doing a great job adapting it. So, aces.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, again, yeah, well done. But yeah, anything you can tease on Darth Vader or main Star Wars Prime?
So we're doing a Mon Cala arc in Darth Vader, and we're doing a Mon Cala arc in Star Wars, and there's a reason they're both coming out at the same time.
Ooh. That was a genuine ooh, by the way. We all looked at each other and kind of like the Imperial officers holding hands and swearing.
We will never be choked by Vader.
I really have to send you that on. It's real. I swear to God.
Those old school, like those old, like legends or whatever. There's some of the craziest stories.
Oh, they're great.
The space rabbit?
So much fun.
Oh,
yeah.
Vader.
Jackson?
Yeah. Vader cast an actor to be fucking Ben Kenobi to like screw with Luke Skywalker. I've never even read it. I just saw a YouTube video about it. And yeah, he like hires an actor to make Skywalker believe that Kenobi never died. And it's like super weird. I just think Vader like, plotting this like
just sitting in
having auditions.
Yeah. Choking out anyone.
Brilliant plan.
Yeah. How will I know if I made it or not? You'll be alive or dead.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Probably kills him anyway.
Yeah,
I think he does, actually.
He dies, and he's like, I hope I didn't disappoint you, Luke. And Luke's like, you kind of fucking mess with my mind, man.
But well, Heather, thanks again for coming on the show. Again, that first issue of Thrawn comes out in comic book stores everywhere on Valentine's Day because, as Heather mentioned right before we started taping, nothing says romance like an intergalactic, like super tactful, evil,
clean-shaven badass.
Well, he doesn't have to shave.
That's right. That's a human terms.
Yes.
You're stupid.
Barefaced.
Stupid human terms.
Yeah,
let's be honest. In space, they wax. It's space wax.
Yeah. We never see them shave.
Or
Damn.
spax.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or maybe, where's that EU story?
Yeah.
But yeah,
there's another question for you to ask. How do they shave or do they wax? Yeah.
Well,
I feel like with 0G it would be smarter to wax. But all those ships have fake gravity.
Yeah, artificial gravity. Anyway, but yeah, thanks again, Heather, for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast, and I hope to be back on soon.
Always a good time. Always a good time.
Yes.
So, gentlemen, what have you gotten into now that we're in February?
I don't know, Sam. What have you gotten into?
One of these days, it won't sound as painful to just chat with your friends.
Yeah. At least as a matter of public record, when I'm like just hanging out eating like chicken and drinking like Fanta, everything's cool. But
that was the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
Eating chicken and drinking Fanta.
It's called catching up.
Right. Of course. I did jury duty this week.
Oh.
That's it.
Did anything happen? Or they just go, no.
Are you not allowed to talk about it?
No, it's a matter of public record. I, wasn't select. They have that thing where you sit in the gallery while they interview each of the jurors. Mm-hmm. All the jurors were fine, so they're like, "Cool, you're good." And I was like, "All right, I get the day off. I'm going to hang out in D.C. because I'm Mason faculty and I get to ride Mason for free. And all the museums I give the most of a shit about are free too. So."
Yeah. Thanks, DC.
Yeah, thank you. And
I was wondering why you were jumping around to all the museums. I saw some of your Instagrams.
Where did you see the fucking Batmobile?
American History Museum.
Oh fuck!
It's on the ground level.
Oh my god!
It is a piece of American history.
I've seen that in person at a car show way back in the day.
I've seen that in person with my eyes.
Whoa!
Same.
I mean,
back when I saw it at the car show with my eyes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's usually how you see something in person.
Yeah.
That was something that happened. I played Dragon Ball Fighter Z for the first time. That just came out at the time we're recording this past Friday. First time I played a PS4 game. No, I played the first Battlefront when that first came out. But I have a PS4 now.
Whew.
I'm the captain now. So
Look at me.
So I got to play that. My mains are Goku, Vegeta, and
Krillin.
Krillin's pretty good.
Yamcha.
Every now and again I'll use Yamcha. He's got the Wolfang Fist, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
The Cell's my third.
So it's just like you were saying, it's just like a versus game.
It's like Marvel vs. Capcom 3-on-3.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Oh,
yeah. You get all the classic, not all the classic characters, but you get a good amount.
Do you get Mr. Satan?
You don't get Mr. Satan.
Okay, so Hercule.
You don't get neither. You get Tien and Chaozu.
Oh,
I mean that's a deep pull. You get Beerus, the cat god of destruction, which is not an exaggeration.
It was going to be so good. What's her name? The girl that is almost identical to Krillin, or not Krillin. The girl that's almost identical to Bulma that like was dating Krillin.
Oh,
It starts with an M, I think.
Marin?
Yeah.
You don't get Marin. You get Krillin's wife, Android 18.
Well, there you go.
You get Frieza. It's fine.
Mm.
It's a good game. It's a lot of fun. It's the best fighting game I've played. Honestly, it's better than Injustice 2 and Street Fighter 5. I'd go that far. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Gauntlet thrown down.
Yeah. At me.
Hmm.
How about you guys? What have you guys gotten into?
Well, as some of you may know, I play a lot of Dead by Daylight, and they recently, I want to say at time of recording this, maybe about a week ago, released a new update or a new DLC where you could play as the pig face from Saw, and that's been rather fun. I enjoy playing against her, but that got started my friend on this marathon of watching all the Saw movies. So I've been watching them with her. We're up to Saw 4 right now, which is about where I stopped watching the series when they were coming out regularly. So I'm excited to see the, was it 2 or 3 that I haven't seen so far?
Honestly, I stopped after 2.
Yeah. 3 was pretty good. You got
Scott Patterson?
Sure.
Luke Danes himself dies horribly. It's fucking depressing and disturbing.
I mean, 2 had
scarring.
Donnie Wahlberg, so I understand. Once you hit that, you don't need any more.
New kid on the block.
Yeah.
Jake.
I watched a fantastic documentary called Milius, about John Milius.
Oh.
Now it's funny because a lot of people might not know the name, but they know the words that he has created and put into famous characters' mouths.
So the modern lexicon.
Yeah. Well, he wrote Apocalypse Now. First of all, that's I think that's his big thing. He directed Conan the Barbarian. He directed Red Dawn. He basically did an uncredited draft of Dirty Harry and really added a lot of, I think, what we know of as Dirty Harry. And he grew up, he's part of that group of amazing filmmakers of the Spielbergs, the Lucases, the Coppolas, and him. And, he was part of that group. But he's also has this kind of reputation as kind of a crazy person. I think he
the Coen brothers created Walter Sobchak in The Big Lebowski.
Oh, he looks
inspired by
exactly like him. But I mean, you hear the stories of of him pulling like a gun on an executive, and or having a gun on the table as an executive, and he's very much in a very left leaning profession, Hollywood. He very much leans to the right.
Yeah.
And
he was bummed, like heartbroken he couldn't fight Vietnam.
Yes, I mean that's a central part of the documentary. He refers to as not being able to go to to go to his war or have his war, and that's something that is kind of is seen throughout his work. And he has a friendship with Oliver Stone. He's someone who has seen war, and he's kind of like amazed at John Milius' kind of like looking, his way of things. And so it's a really interesting piece on the man. And it's he suffered a stroke. I think the documentary came out in 2013. I think he's recovered. He's recovering really well from it. But that's a part of the documentary that happens. They talk about how Spielberg talks about I think he refers to it as the worst thing that ever happened to one of his friends, this man who's such a great writer. I mean, he is the guy Spielberg called up and said, we need a speech in Jaws. And he came up with the USS Indianapolis speech. That was supposedly 10 pages. He said over the phone. And, Robert Shaw was like, well, let's cut it down. And he took it down to 5 pages. Anyway, but Spielberg talks about how it's so sad this guy at the time wasn't able to speak or write. And that was his gift, to film.
I feel like in a lot of ways Milius is Generation 2 Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah, he definitely has a Peckinpah thing, and is
The
one
outlaw filmmaker.
and it's like that doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, I'm sure it does somewhere, but in terms of like big movies coming out, it's not really. And you can see that as a good thing or a bad thing. I am very much drawn to that type of filmmaker, and kind of that attitude of making movies. It's kind of just this wild thing, and I don't know, he's a really interesting guy. I mean, he says some crazy stuff. They detail it in the documentary. But when you really sit back and look at the work he's done, a lot of it being, doctoring up scripts, something that isn't necessarily seen on, credits and put out there.
Like Carrie Fisher.
Like Carrie Fisher. But it's kind of amazing when they go through and you realize, a lot of the things we say are pop culture lines are something that he came up with. A lot of times, somebody will, be in the office next door or on the phone and say, hey, get John Milius on the phone and have him write this, and he'll write a speech. So it's kind of amazing. I mean, I did not realize how close he was to George Lucas, for example. Like the two of them are really, really good friends.
They were part of them. Coppola, Spielberg, and Landis were like the team Zenescope or Zoetrope.
Mm-hmm. There's a great moment, and I know you're a big fan of Apocalypse Now, Sam, where he talks about being tasked to, adapt Heart of Darkness. And Coppola sat him down and goes, look, if this movie kills me, Lucas is going to take over. If it kills Lucas, you're going to take over. He goes, some way, somehow, this movie's going to get made. So, because they focus on that a lot. But
wild George Lucas directing. Because I can see John Milius directing Apocalypse Now. I can't see George Lucas.
What I didn't realize was George Lucas originally was the guy who had the idea for it. Like, he was the guy that's like, we're going to make it a low-budget, small-scope anti-war film. And John Milius was like, no. And he even says, like, Lucas talks about it, he's like, Milius was very much on board with Coppola's idea, not my idea. But it's I don't know, it's kind of amazing. It's just I think I see him like in there's a great documentary about Dirty Harry that I watched a while ago, and every so often we'll rewatch the movie because it's I think it's a great movie, and he shows up in it and he's so like larger than life when he talks and comes up with ideas, and the way he communicates and speaks, and how he uses dialogue and whatnot, just in his own life. That I was just reading up on him. They're like, oh, there's a documentary that came out, and I recommend it. I mean, if you're a fan of just movies in general and like film history, he's a huge part of it. He's the guy that helped. He had that famous line. It was like, if we couldn't cast Arnold Schwarzenegger, we had to build him. For Conan. But you get great little snippets. Harrison Ford's in there, Clint Eastwood, of course. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone. They have little talking head interviews. And
are the Coens in there?
I don't remember seeing the Coens in there, no. But they don't mention. If you type in John Milius on like Google Images, the picture of Walter will show up, and like I said, if you're like, what does John Milius look like? Seriously, he looks almost the earlier years. The kind of like. John Milius prime is like is Walter from
Big Lebowski,
and the idea of pulling a gun out in the middle of a bowling alley doesn't seem like it's that far fetched for the tall tales the tall tales of John Milius.
The eulogy to Vietnam, like ostensibly for Donnie, that becomes a eulogy for Vietnam. Like soldiers lost everywhere.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that movie again, knowing it's John Milius.
It's basically they're just like John Milius is in this movie, is in this world now.
Yeah, but from what I've read, he seems to be doing better, post stroke. But just one of those guys. I mean, like he just really
he ditched film school to live as a mountain man in the fucking.
Well, he did Jeremiah.
He wrote Jeremiah Johnson
Jeremiah
based
Johnson,
on like trying to reclaim conquer nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I recommend that. I think it's a wild ride, very entertaining. So, and like I said, just naming those those movies, we've all talked about them multiple times. I mean, you owe your life to Conan the Barbarian.
I do, don't I?
So you owe your life to John Milius.
Damn,
and Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So
for the listeners at home that don't know the context there, because I only mentioned it in like half the interviews we do. My parents' first date was Conan the Barbarian. So thanks to John Milius, I exist.
That explains why you live your life by the rules of what is good in life.
Yes. Yes.
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, the lamentations of the women. And
I mainly hear lamentations of women.
yeah, and they of course Arnold, they show the movie and he starts it, and then Arnold present day finishes it. But no, every time they talked about Conan in it, I just kept thinking of Sam Stone.
Just thinking Jack Stone sitting there. Yes.
Yeah. And if you guys had ever met my mom, she would not be all in for a fucking Conan movie.
Yeah.
But she agreed to see Conan.
Yeah, I'm trying to say what's the sell for that? You know what I mean?
The Jack Stone charm.
It's the Jack. It's got to be.
Well, there's that, I'm sure, but she was like, I wanted to see that movie. You know, me and her talking about it obviously years later because I'm alive and conscious. She was like, I agreed to see Conan because I wanted to seem like I was tough.
Well, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Because that's I mean, that's Conan.
Yeah.
Also, if your dad grew a beard, he'd kind of look like John Milius.
There is times where he's had a beard.
Because I've seen there was some photos of John Milius prime, and I was like, Jack Stone.
There's some photos of my father.
I've seen him. I've even met him.
With my eyes.
Yeah, I've even met him.
In person with your eyes? I met him.
What was your parents' first dates?
E.T., I think.
I think they just went out to dinner.
Okay.
There was nothing remarkable about the first date enough to tell the story to the kids.
None of my first dates have been remarkable.
Yeah,
Actually,
right?
no, that's not true. I went on a first date and saw Rambo 4 at her suggestion.
Oh.
And we dated for 3 years.
Sam went along. Sam went along because he wanted to seem tough.
Yeah.
Joke's on her. For 3 years.
One of my first dates was the first date. The first date I ever went on was Space Jam.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't go on any dates in the 90s.
I mean, it was.
I know that. Yeah.
I was in 4th grade. So
Parents a couple rows back. And
her grandmother.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Still friends with the girl to this day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Jake, do you have any cool first date stories? Or
Nope.
just first? Okay. All right. Well, thanks again to Heather Antos for coming on the show. Again, Thrawn #1 out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, February 14th. Chris, you...
I have my hand raised just, because isn't this this episode the last episode that's going out before Black Panther comes out? Do I have my dates?
There is one
release
more.
Dates?
There's
Okay.
one more.
Oh, then we can talk about our
Shut up, Chris.
expectations.
Jesus Christ.
I wasted a hand raise.
Yeah, you get your one hand raised every week, and you waste it on that.
Yeah. I am...
Mark it off, Sam.
I'm tough but fair. I'm a benevolent dictator in the geek out world.
You do get one a week.
Geek Out World. Jesus. What a fucking horror show that would be.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm in it.
Yeah. With your eyes.
Oh, no. Also, read Doom Patrol, Volume 1.
Yeah. Let's get Gerard Way on the show.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to his people.
Oh, my God.
But
That'd
you know
be amazing.
who we should thank because she was on the show?
Heather Antos.
Everything coming up, Antos. Thanks again, Heather. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
Fried chicken.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.